Well, yeah. Let's try this again. Uh, I know that sounds weird. Although, actually, not really. Anyways, I mean that in two distinct ways. One is the obvious. I'm redoing this video right here because the last one was a bit... Well, let's just say there was one part where I was over the top in my hate boner for agate and move on. Now, for those that have never played the Sky games and have only played the Cold Steel games, I want to make this, and I'm going to be saying this probably a dozen times in this, I almost said this movie, in this video. I like Agate in Cold Steel 3. I hate him in Sky 1. He is my least favorite character in Sky 1, hands down. Not that there's too big of a pool to choose from with Sky 1 because of how simple it is, but we can get into that later. This is a game I played on the PSP, and I didn't get very far in it. So when it came to Steam and I started streaming it, I actually enjoyed the hell out of my time with it. Well, okay. To be more accurate, I enjoyed several aspects, except for some stuff we'll get into. As per usual, I want to show off my notes. 1, 2, and just a little bit at the top there. So basically 2 pages of notes. Because, yeah. So, Falcom, let's just get into some of the behind the scenes, because, like I said in the last version, I don't really look at behind the scenes unless I'm interested in the behind the scenes, because I don't do this for a job. This isn't my career, so I'm just going to talk about behind the scenes stuff that interests me. And, well, the behind the scenes of Sky 1 intrigued me. Now, granted, I got this from the wiki, so grain of salt. But originally, they effectively wanted a fresh start with Sky 1 because they had gone, and I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation. The setting was known as Gagharf in the older games, which I don't remember how to say them. It's no, I really don't know how to pronounce it. Whatever the Kiseki games were originally, the series that the Kiseki games, that is to say the Legend of Heroes series, was originally a part of. So, maybe that was, maybe I can just say the Legend of Heroes? I don't know. But yeah, they decided to come out with a new setting called Zemuria, and they started crafting that. Actually based upon uh, the setting of Liberl specifically is of course inspired by images of Swiss, Austria, and the home of Falcom's then president, Thailand. And I gotta say, the locations in this game do look pretty nice, admittedly. But then again, this series has always had good locations, so make of that what you will. They also wanted to focus on two things. They wanted clock. They wanted the clockwork. One of the employees at Falcom liked clockwork, so what they did was they went ahead and worked on. Excuse me. Excuse me again. Body, can you fuck off? That's as vulgar as I hope I get in this video. Just saying fuck off. The F-bombs are about as vulgar as I want to get. Anyways, where was I? Right. One of the um, key things. Fucking yawn attack. One of the key things in with this is that they wanted was clockwork. So that's why the design of the orbments are as they are, because they kind of wanted to do steampunk. They didn't quite want to do steampunk Final Fantasy, but they did want to incorporate, you know, clockwork and kind of have that kind of mentality, which of course led to Tita and Professor Russell, which I am in favor of. So make of that what you will, especially Tita. Holy shit. But we can get into her later. So, originally this was released on PC. This game was a... Oh, there's one more thing I need to discuss before the ports. Sorry. They also wanted to... Effectively, they wanted to Tomb Raider it up a bit. Now, if you don't fully understand what I mean by that, Tomb Raider was really popular. And okay, let me be blunt. The only reason people saw Lara Croft as a sex object was because of the marketing. That was the marketing's fault, not the game's fault. There is literally a scene, specifically in the second one, right at the end, and where she goes to take a shower, you're still there, and she basically shoots you because, well, she's shooting a perv. Let's just be blunt. You know? So, no. Laura Croft has never been supposed to be, was never supposed to be a sex object. She was just supposed to be, an attractive character in a video game. Although, I do think the reboot went a little too far in trying to circumvent the whole sex object thing, but let's not get into that. But how does that tie into this game? Well, they wanted a female main character, and they had to push harder than they needed to. The example I said in the what we will call the rough draft of this video, which is funny because that's 2 reviews now that have had rough drafts. The other one being Ruby Volume 3 from, God, 3 years ago now, at the time I'm recording this. But anyways, 3 years, but, my Volume 3 video, aside, my Volume 3 video aside, excuse me, sorry, I'm stumbling. In the rough draft of this video that I did for this video, the first take, I had mentioned that I basically made fun of the lore runner, is what I did, which is also a reason too. I'm scrapping the rough draft, by the way. Because he actually pointed out that Estelle felt like more the main character than Joshua did. And everybody who collectively knew about Sky 1 basically said, yeah, Lore, she is the main character. Huh? Like, it was just like visible confusion. Now, I imagine that's because Lore only ever played the PC version. Like, he never had a PSP, and he didn't have a physical copy of the PSP version, because the physical copy of the PSP version has Estelle right there on the cover. Second chapter as well, by the way, because second chapter does feel like Estelle's story, even so. And it's funny because if you go through, even just the prologue of Sky 2, which I have already at this point, this is post the first day of streaming that I did, then Sky, then that this is effectively Estelle's story. Now, granted, Joshua is, a central character in there, and he has his own storyline as well, but his storyline doesn't really kick into high gear until you get to Sky 2, when he starts really adopting the whole. Sorry. When he starts adopting the whole assassin garb that he does in Sky 2 because of the end of this game. And give me one sec here. Anyways, you know, because he dons the assassin garb and he leaves, right? We can talk more about that during the story section, but they wanted a female protagonist and they ended up getting their wish. In fact, what's funny is Joshua and Estelle actually had their, well, I don't want to say they had their genders flipped, but they did have their roles flipped because originally Estelle was going to act like Joshua and Joshua was going to act like Estelle. I don't think that would have worked personally. Maybe it would have gotten Stephanie. It would have made it so that Stephanie Say and Johnny Abash were on the roles, but I don't know. This was the 2000s after all, and casting for English versions of Japanese properties were doing that all over the place. There's three in particular that I can think of, and then there's another one that my best friend came up with, and I forget the name of it. So I don't remember the series that it's from. So they got their female main character, which was good because we I do like that because it's funny. Not to go too much into story, but I do think Estelle is a strong character, while still having traits that are usually associated with female characters, right? They're shy about it, confessing their teenage girl stereotypes. In other words, they're shy about confessing their love for their to their to the guy that they're in love with, and yada yada yada, right? But that makes perfect sense because, well, this is the whole thing. The guy she's crushing on, well, that's awkward AF, but we can get into why later. Also, oh, nice job making it squicky, Icky Cassius in the sequel. Anyways, so let's talk about the releases, shall we? Because I have a whole big note here about it. So I'll just go ahead and read you my note. Had an OG PC release in Japan, but we got the PC version thanks to Xseed, with Ghostlight Games bringing it to Europe, also Japan only PS3 version. To dissect that a little bit, as I was saying earlier, this was originally a PC exclusive. Now, okay, I have spoken out against PC versions for years at this point. Now, you might be asking, well, why? Why do you not like PC ports, Blue Wolf? Because I like it when PC games don't require you to upgrade your goddamn machine every 3 to 5 years and spend like $3,000 doing so. I would rather spend $600 and get an upgraded console, and there we go, we're good, right? But they chose to release on the PC. I'm guessing that's because the older games were on PC as well, and yeah, then they decided to bring it to the PSP. I don't know why, but that was the version that we got. Was the PSP version. God damn it, Potty. Hey, stop it. And yeah, so the PSP version was what we got, and then we ended up never getting, the PC version until I want to say that, well, the re-release, the PS3 re-release He was in the 2000s, and I think it was 2004 when another version came to PC in Japan. I I forget because I didn't write that down because I'm an idiot. Also, originally I might as well mention this now because I will mention this in Sky 2. Sky 2 was originally going to just be the back half of this game. Which is funny because they actually do give you an excuse of why you have to, minor spoilers for Sky 2, why you have to basically rebuild your quartz collection again. Because they are effectively going with the upgraded slots for. Oh, come on! Ah, they're going with the upgraded slots version for this game, so. So, speaking of game, let's get into the gameplay. So, I'm going to try and structure this a bit better. So, we're going to start with the quality of the port, then we'll talk about the tutorials, then we'll talk about what those tutorials provide you, and then we'll go from there. What is with the Sky Game ports? Okay. That might sound like a bit of a weird statement, but well, let me put it to you this way. Well, Sky 1 ran fine for the most part, outside of a laggy, the anime opening. Outside of a bit of lag in the anime opening, the opening scene, the animated scene, Sky 1 ran fine. A little bit laggy here and there, but otherwise fine. The only problem was alt tabbing. So, excuse me. So, like, my biggest problem here is the port is just the ports have issues. And that's the other thing, too. I ran into way too many bugs in Sky 2. I've already run into too many bugs in Sky 2. There was, like, OBS is apparently it has a hate boner for Trails in the Sky 2. And it's really, really messed up. My computer crashed while trying to stream it because I kept flipping back and forth. So, note to self, don't be flipping back and forth. Once you get it set up, just have it set up. Then there was issues where it wasn't capturing it visually. Oh, it was capturing the audio, but it wasn't capturing the footage. The footage was just stagnant. Now, I know these are things I should be saying in my Sky 2 video, but again, it just kind of goes to show how badly programmed these ports are. Now, I don't know if the GOG version is any better. I'd have to watch Laura's classic run on this game in order to figure that out. And we'll see when we eventually get to Sky 2, but oh my god, just ugh is all I have to say. So yeah, not good quality. I'm not so much bugged by the fact that I have to actually I want to show the proper controller, damn it. Ah, there it is. I'm not actually upset that I have to enable controller support, but we'll be talking about why having a controller actually is more of a pain in my ass as going forward. And yes, I have the TV on because I want to make sure I get through this as fast as I can, so I'm keeping an eye on the timestamp down there. Come on, and body, Jesus. Anyways, so yeah, the port not the greatest. So then there's the tutorials. The tutorials are actually not bad. They actually do explain the gameplay pretty well. These are not the worst tutorials I've ever encountered. That honor would go to Xenoblade 2, but that's beside the point. So, yeah, the tutorials pop up a lot. They call them hints, but there is thankfully, if you played Sky 1, especially if you go straight from Sky 1 to Sky 2, yeah, you can actually skip a lot of the tutorializing of a lot of things because it's just like there was literally a choice where it was like, hey, I don't want to deal with all of the tutorial crap for like battles and turn order and all that crap. Just just give me the frickin' chain, the chain attack, you know. The tutorials are fine and you can actually skip the backstory stuff. So that's cool. But let's talk about what the overlong tutorial. Yeah, this game's kind of got a long tutorial to talk about. So let's talk about orbments and quartz first. Orbments are basically the device you carry that has the slots. I'm not a fan of only have of the limited slots. I never have, but it makes sense. You get, I think it's like 8 total. Excuse me. You get 8 slots total, and you basically have to insert quartz to kind of work with it. It's true throughout the entire series, so it's not anything too ridiculous. Although they actually kind of mitigate that with Master Quartz starting Steel 1. So unless Master Quartz were in the Crossbell games, which I won't find out of until for another excuse me, like 15 months. So then we have quartz, which are basically this game's version of materia from Final Fantasy VII, which is good. Which is good because it's actually kind of an engaging thing. So you can actually, and this one actually has, you can boost stats and it will give you spells, which is nice. So it's also nice when those spells are actually powered up in Sky 2. Funny enough. But then again, you start that game at around level 40. I started at level 36, but that's because I ended this game at level 36. So yeah. Is there anything related to quartz I want to talk about in my gameplay notes? Just checking. No. Okay. So yeah, there's not much for me to say about orbits. It's the materia system. It's cool. Moving on. So then there's the notebooks. The notebooks could be better, honestly. They really don't have a lot of whatchamacallit. They don't have a lot of info for you. You will get lost if you don't bring up a walkthrough, and that is it. Unfortunately, which unfortunately ties into my guide needs note on my second page. But yeah. So then there's the battles. So I was never a big fan of turn order. The thing on the side where it's like, where it shows who's gonna attack when. I have softened on that over the years, but I still say that there are some games where your ability to affect the turn order is effectively close to non-existent. Final Fantasy X being a big one, right? Especially considering some games, it literally feels like the enemy will just randomly get another turn because screw you. Cold Steel pulls this all the time with its unwinnable battles. So then there's the movement, which, I mean, the problem with movement in this game is that it really is more of just a hindrance, keeping you away from the enemy. This is going to be true uh, in Sky 2, by the way. going to have to do a young count at some point. Anyways. But yeah, the movement really is just more of a hindrance. It kind of matters for certain abilities from the enemies, but that's it. And otherwise, it's not that great. Although I like it better in Cold Steel, but that's also because I don't get fucked over, because 9 times out of 10, the enemy just immediately activates the area of effect attack that it was charging up. So then there's your spells, they call arts. Arts, not much for me to say there. And then there's S breaks, which are basically limit breaks. You fill up the CP gauge, and when it hits 100, you can unleash a powerful attack on the enemy. And if it gets to 200, you get the strongest version of that attack. Oh, alright. Confession time, though. And complaint time again. The S breaks suck in this game. No, seriously. They fucking suck in this game. I have documented evidence that so many of Joshua's attacks when he was using Sever, his first S break, missed. In fact, I think the ratio was something like 8 misses to 2 hits or something really stupid. I'd have to actually go through the entire, however long playthrough in order to see that. But oh my god, it angers me. It angered me so hard trying to it angered me so hard that he kept missing. It was pissing me off. Estelle was hitting fine, but Joshua was missing all over the place, and it just pissed me off. In fact, his hit rate in general was absolute trash. I don't remember running into that in the PSP version, so what the hell? Did they fiddle with the goddamn hit rate? Because if so, screw that nonsense. Like, it's ridiculous. There's 2 things that I cannot stand in RPGs. He's low hit rate and high evasion rate. Those are the 2 things that I can't stand. And in general, it just drives me up a goddamn wall. Thankfully, you can save anywhere. So if you save often, hey, congratulations. Or, which is actually more handy for me in Sky 2 because of all of the crash issues I have, all of the technical issues I have mentioned. Speaking of that, let's talk about enemies on the field, shall we? Alright. There have been people out there that have praised this system. Because the random encounters go right, and they shock you and yada yada yada. The problem, and some people say that, enemies on the field are better because you can avoid them and yada yada yada. Except 9 times out of 10, when a game pulls the enemies on the fields thing, they throw you in dungeons where you literally are forced to fight enemies. Where you will not get past the enemy because it's in your goddamn way. Or, and this is the other fun one, enemies will beeline to you because screw you, right? Now, yeah, there's running away from combat. You can either run away from combat or you can just fight them, but here's the problem. Excuse me. When you go ahead and see, the problem is that the enemies on the field are irritating. Let's just sum that up. They are irritating. And the reason I say that is because Well, it boils down to your party. Because your party, all of your party members are on the field. And if even one of them gets touched by an enemy that beelines for you, especially if they attack from the back, yeah, they are. You're going to go into a battle and it's going to be a surprise attack. In other words, an ambush. I hate that so goddamn much. And then that also leads me to another problem. That actually segues nicely into another issue I have with this game, and that's exp scaling. See, fighting a bunch of weak ass enemies that give you like 20 or 30 exp each, okay, you know what, that actually wouldn't be too bad, especially if you could just get rid of the enemies quickly. The problem is with the scaling exp system, that becomes random encounters just become nuisances that interrupt your gameplay, and it happens way too fucking quickly, in my blunt opinion. Like, okay, maybe if each area is like the spot that they expect you to be at was like 5 level, okay, let's say the first area is like first chapter is like up to level 10, right? And so the enemies will kind of allow you to gain decent exp until level 10. Then the next level cap is like another 5 or whatever, or 10. No, 10. We'll go 10 in per, right? So level 1, so chapter 1 slash prologue is up to level 10. Okay. Then chapter 2 is level 10 to level 20. Okay. So once I'm level 20, I'm curb stomping everything in chapter 2. Okay, that's cool. Then chapter 3, up to level 30. Chapter 4, up to level 40. I'd be okay with that. And the reason why? Well, for the exact simple reason of I beat the game at around level 40. Right? Even if you just did it by 5 increments past chapter, the first chapter. So the prologue is up to level 5. Chapter 1 is up to level 10, 15, 20, and 20, or have it be that different areas would do that. So let's say the prologue is up to level 5, the chapter 1 is up to level 10, and then chapter 2 you have up to level like 15, and then level 3 to 20, and then to 25. I've and maybe some of the harder enemies could circumvent that, and then chapter 4 could just be 30 to 40, which although up until the end of the tournament is up to around level 35. If you really wanted to keep Zen getting no fucking exp, then you could do that, and then have the final dungeon be the rest of the way. The problem is that the game is ridiculously skewed in against people who enjoy leveling. And that is just not cool, in my opinion. Especially considering the scaling exp. The thing is that bosses do not play fair in this game. And neither do the trash mobs, to be blunt. Because there are enemies that will self-destruct, and there are enemies that will heal themselves. And so many trash mobs just do not play fair. They heal themselves all the goddamn motherfucking time, and it is such an irritant to deal with. The trash mobs in Zeiss coming to mind immediately. Those little fuckers were giving me like something stupid like 5 exp, for a group of them, because each one was only worth 1 exp at that point. I fucking hate level scaling. Now, admittedly, some games can do level scaling fine, and it can work out perfectly well. But then there's other games that just, I mean, yeah, sure, you can keep gaining that 1 exp forever, but why am I going to go through a million battles just to get 500 exp? Like, just to level up when my character is 500 exp away. I know it's an exaggeration because it's 500 battles for 500 levels, but you see my problem. I pointed this out on stream. If I wanted to level Zin specifically, was the character. If I wanted to level Zin up to that point, I think it was like I had to go through another 283 battles. Or, to be more accurate, kill, 283 monsters, which I think would have only decreased that total by a third. But I also pointed out that but even decreasing that by a third still would have been 80. That still would have been 80 battles, which at that point was like just was like barely under being 500 levels less, or over 500 levels less than the total battles I had encountered in the entire game. And then I also pointed out that my playtime was like 55 hours at that point. Yeah. This game isn't exactly that long, it's just got a lot of bullshit to kind of circumvent you. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry to anyone who likes the level scaling. I don't. I can't stand level scaling. I find it's an arbitrary, artificial way of extending the stuff. Like, again, if I want to go curb stomp, let's say the carrier armor in Final Fantasy VII, the giant robot with grabby arms. If I want to curb stomp that thing by going off and having, um, what is it? W summon Knights of the Hound, and Bahamut Zero, I want to say. Hey, then I can do that. I have to grind for it. I have to grind my face off, basically, for it. But I can do that. So yeah, I am not a fan of X scaling. Moving on. Then there's also the protection battles, which are actually not as bad as as you might think. So I guess with an addendum to that, let's talk about the travel time. There is no fast travel in this game. And so you're traversing across over an entire country. I am reminded of a Fire Emblem game, specifically the fourth one, Genealogy of the Holy War. I know some people will call this sacrilege, but fuck Genealogy of the Holy War. Fuck it so hard. Now, I mean that in terms of gameplay. I should make that clear, but I guess I figured you would have figured that out because this is the gameplay section of my Trials in the Sky video. But anyways, I hate the gameplay of Genealogy of the Holy War. I hate it. It is one of the worst Fire Emblem gameplay experiences I have ever had. I could not stand it. I actually did try it. I tried to play it. I couldn't get past. I think I got past chapter 1, and then I just put the game down because I just couldn't continue. One sec. All right, I'm gonna have to go take some Tylenol Cold and Silence after this. Anyways, my point is, Genealogy of the Holy War was boring to play, and you want to know why? Travel time. Let's take the first map for example. Okay, the maps in Genealogy are way too fucking big, but let's take the first map. Okay. And I know. In lore, you're supposed to be traveling over an entire country. I don't care. I don't need that to be represented in gameplay. Represent that with a map and with a line of dots. We're good. AKA what, or, a little sprite of the character walking across the map, like the GBA games did. Anyways, Anyways, so let's take the first chapter of genealogy. Huge map, and there's villages that if you save those villages, you will gain a whole bunch of money. The problem is that the enemy who is destroying the villages needs to spend like 2 or 3 turns destroying the villages. And the problem is you cannot get the full amount because they just auto destroy villages. Now, sometimes that's fine because it's trying to establish the point. Sacred Stones actually did this brilliantly. But the problem is that you're literally just being. I can't go and help those people. I'm too late because the game is artificially handcuffing me. And I hate that. And that's kind of part of, and it's all because of travel time. That's the similar thing that I feel like with here. The travel time in here is ridiculous. It takes forever to go anywhere. Here, they try to mitigate this somewhat by making it so you can't revisit older regions. I don't like that, honestly, because it feels like it feels arbitrary, in my blunt opinion, which is something that will unfortunately continue into into the Cold Steel games. But I feel like the Cold Steel games had a better excuse, right? Excuse, right? You don't have the right paperwork to re-enter. We don't have the right paperwork to enter a specific region anymore, which I feel is really dumb, but whatever. But yeah, I just do not like the travel time. Let's see. Talked about all those. Alright, let's talk about the dungeons next. They're boring. I know. I hate agreeing with the lore runner on certain things, but man, the dungeons are not very interesting. They're basically just glorified mazes, and it really just kind of feels. It feels like there's nothing special about them. I mean, sure, there's some world building stuff that you can go and do. You can go and explore and do some world building in certain sections, but that's about it. And it really just drags down everything else, in my blunt opinion. So yeah, not much to say. This. Although I will say this, the dungeons really needed maps because, good lord, the dungeons in the the dungeons in Sky One are really bad. There is one where you have a map, and that is the Grand Seal sewers when you're trying to find that one spot. Except that map sucks. From how I was looking at it, but yeah. Really, really did not like the dungeons. There was also another one, Nebel Valley, which was just as bad. Oh, I forgot one thing with the combat. Why? Why did I have to forget that? And that is the trash mobs in Zeiss. Although that just plays into the whole that just plays into the whole battles take too long and they're not worth it. But anyways. But yeah. So the lack of dungeon maps is really stupid and just not worth my time. Then there's the investigation sections. These are actually kind of neat because you actually do investigate what happened. It's a mechanic they only use like twice in the first game. And so far in Sky 2, they used it once. So, nice. So then there's the bosses, which are fine. But some of the bosses are actually kind of cool, and others are just, ugh, right? Oh, I forgot to mention that leveling up restores your health and EP, your magic capacity. So that's cool. Not much to say there. Just it's a nice thing to make note of. So then there's the fishing minigame, which actually got its start here. I don't like how the fishing game is handled. Not so much in Sky 1, because there's only one spot for it. But in Sky 2, I really don't like the fishing game at all. Here, it's okay, if a bit limited. So yeah, the Shining Palms was the note I forgot. The Shining Palms actually, they're irritating. High evasion, barely can hit them, and they also are, their AI basically favors running away way too much. My next note is agate. Alright. I'm gonna try and keep this brief and less vulgar, but I hate agate. Now, okay, I know I'm dipping a bit into story here, but in order to explain why I hate him in terms of gameplay, I need to do this. Okay? Agate is an arrogant fucking prick in this game. Extremely arrogant. To the point of just, what the fuck? And sometimes an arrogant person can earn that arrogance. Loxus from Fairy Tail coming to mind immediately because he was that damn strong. Here's the problem. Agate is not that strong. In fact, in gameplay, he was not pulling his weight, like, at all. No, he missed, like, 50% of his hits. He barely helped out in any of the fights I was in. It was just goddamn stupid. I hated it. I hated having Agate in my party. And, well, yes, I did get that hilarious Steam achievement. Event the reverse harem for bringing Olivier and Zin. You better believe I wasn't going to bring frickin' Agate because he was fucking useless to me. I actually got more use out of having Tita in my party. Yes, Tita, the fucking little girl with a gun who's probably in the single digit range. I don't actually know what age she is in this game. Forgive me, I didn't look it up. Just pissed me off. So then we encounter Zin, who joins us for a bit, and he actually has a fucking brain in his head. We bring Tita along, and we go and we get the moss to help Agate, because Agate got poisoned by the bad guys because he decided to trigger the rebellious side of a child like a moron. Like, God. Again, I said this on stream, but if you had brought her along, she would have been a variable you could have accounted for. I would argue you who should have accounted for her. Whatever. We can get into that more in the story section. But yeah, so then he gets poisoned. We go and find that moss, which leads us to the most irritating boss fight in this game, King Penguin. I hated fighting him, and that's all I'm gonna say on that. So then we go to Leston Fortress, where Agate somewhat pulls his weight. He acts like an asshole. More on that in the story section. And then we go fight in the tournament in the final chapter. I like this. I really do. The tournament is actually kind of a fun series of boss fights, and it's actually kind of an engaging storyline. But that's also because Grand Seal actually, well, it's still X scaling. The enemies are actually powerful enough that I could actually level. I leveled like several goddamn times. And this is why I hate the X scaling. They didn't balance it. all of the good exp is in Grand Seal, and every other region can basically be told, go fuck yourself. Yeah. I didn't mention, now, Less Than Fortress I kind of didn't skimmed over because I wanted to talk about it here. Less Than Fortress is where you have to basically start doing, is basically the first of two stealth sections. Now, granted, the penalty for failure is you're just sent back. Heck, so it's not as bad. It's just I kept resetting because I wanted the bonus BP from it. Oh, that's right. I didn't talk about the bracer quests. Oh my god. So, bracer quests and BP you take on by you viewing the bulletin board or meeting people in this, at certain places. He says sometimes there'll be quest chains, and you gain BP. Then you raise your rank and you get rewards based upon how high your rank goes. So that's nice. That's really all I needed to say for that. So then there's this stealth mission in Grand Seal. Then we go off to the villa to rescue Princess Claudia, who I did not talk about in my rough draft because I'm an idiot. Oof. So we go and we rescue the princess. I like the villa, honestly, because there's actually a spot where one of the characters, Niall, actually has a buddy in there, and he becomes a free rest spot for you. Which I utilized because there came a point when Joshua was one battle away from leveling up. It was annoying. Also, the X scaling screwed over. It also kind of increased the freaking gap between the characters. Exp, so that also was irritating. So yeah, that was cool. Then we deal with some stuff, and then we go down to the final dungeon. Now I didn't mention the Grand Seal Castle stealth section. That's because it's not really a stealth section. It's just an infiltration that we should talk about in the story. So, moving on. In fact, let's actually add... Let's just add to that note. Because, yeah. Let's see. So yeah, then we get into the final dungeon, which just it has way too many annoying battles, especially the monsters in chests, which I haven't talked about. The monsters in the chests are kind of irritating fights, especially this one type I ran into in the final dungeon. See what it is it's three robots that every time you try to use an art, they'll use their missiles that cancel your arts. Oh, and then you have the support bots that will all spam Latira. In other words, the AoE spell that heals for 1,000 frickin' HP. And they will do that constantly. Even if only one of them needs to use it, they'll all of them will fricking use it. So that's like 3 or 4 of them that you have to sit there and watch cast Latira. It is so stupid. Oh, and then the misclicks also made me waste resources because I didn't talk about the food. God damn it, how much didn't I talk about? I talked about that. I corrected myself on that. Oh, I didn't even talk about that either. Well, the choices is really just part of the BP, so yeah. But yeah, because there are food items that can actually act as healing items, which is good. Then but I was wasting this really good this food item mostly because I kept accidentally running because the nature of how the controls work on the PC version. This would never happen on the PSP after a bit because I would get used to the fact that it would actually have freaking cursor memory. The problem is that it's also part of the problem is also the mouse. Because this kept shifting, so I kept thinking I had to adjust it. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. So that was causing issues. I don't really have anything to say about the music. Then there's the final boss. And I really don't know what the hell was up with Joshua's strength. Joshua was basically doing no damage in the final battles. And I couldn't understand why. It was so weird. But I digress. Is there anything else gameplay wise I want to talk about? Talked about that, talked about those, talked about that. Alright, let's move on to story then. So let's talk about each of the characters, shall we? Let's start with Estelle. Estelle is very interesting to me because I like her development. I do think she's a bit too abrasive, but then I also see Agate and realize she's a frickin' saint. Anyways, she is a typical anime protagonist for the most part, but that's not a bad thing in my opinion, because that actually helps to kind of ground her as just a normal person, right? She's not some super ubermensch, and she's not, the super special, awesome person with a hidden past or whatever, which is funny because that actually is more suited for the men in her life. Yes, even Olivier. The only one who doesn't hide that he has, that he's that damn good or that damn powerful or whatever is Zin, but that's just because as he literally is just there to, to be honest. So, yeah. Then there's Joshua, who is observant, stoic, and a bit on the dark side. Throughout like the entire game. Yeah. Then there's Shara, their mentor, who is absolutely awesome. As an aside, I know I've finished with gameplay, but I love Shara's S-Whip. Someone's been nutty. Whip, laugh, and then just rapidly whipping. Oh, God, that is so funny. And when she pulls out that whip, it's like, yeah, whip? What the hell? It's like, oh, so you're okay with swords and staves, quarterstaffs, but but heaven forbid somebody pull a whip out on you, try to whip you. So then there's Cassius. Now, Cassius is interesting because, well, you know how I said Estelle was not the super special, has awesome, something awesome in their backstory and yada yada yada? Excuse me. Yeah, Cassius is basically an S-rank bracer who was also very high up in the military. Yeah. So he disappears on an airliner that we end up finding and fighting the Kapua family. Emily to go and get it back. This is the first time we're actually introduced to they're being manipulated thing. So keep that in the back of your mind. So then we're introduced to Chloe in Chapter 2. I'm just rapid firing because I don't have a lot to say. There's nothing to really say about the airliner. Although I will say this, Estelle and Joshua traveling across the entire country, I touched upon this a bit earlier with travel time, that actually works for me. I just wish there was a fast travel system. Thank you, Cold Steel, for actually giving me that. So then we're introduced to Chloe and Zeeg, who is awesome. Both are awesome. And I like chapter 2, how chapter 2 ends. Dalmor unleashes his hounds on us, and then, and the Black Orbment that we actually get handed to us at the beginning of chapter 2, or the end of chapter 1, one of the two, actually saves us from another artifact that Mayor Dalmor had. He unleashes the hounds on us. Thus we defeat them. Then he freezes us so he can get away, and then the Black Orbment is like, nope. Lol, nope. And then we get to chase after him. Chloe, on the other hand, actually calls in the cavalry. Specifically, Lieutenant Schwarz. No, not Schwarzer, Schwarz. Although that would be funny if Cold Steel actually took place during Sky and the frickin' excuse me. And the cavalry that she called was actually Reen. But that's the realm of fan fiction. Let's see. I'll get into that more when we get. I will make a mental note to talk about that a bit later. But let's talk about. Let's talk about the orphanage now. I like the idea of the orphanage. It's funny because RPGs tend to always have at least one. Tend to have this as a plot point at some point in their games. Chrono Cross did, although that one's got some nasty implications. Chrono Cross had one. Xenogears had one. This game has one. Final Fantasy VIII had one. And it's actually kind of nice. Nice. Then we go to Janus Royal Academy and help take part in the play about the two knights. Knights that actually were both in love with the princess. That's kind of nice. So now we get to move on to chapter 3 and start talking about the characters who I either haven't mentioned yet or that are now relevant here. First one in question is Tita. I love Tita. Tita is a bundle of adorable joy and fuck you, Agate. This is also where the fuck you, Agate really starts coming in because the problem is that Agate is both simultaneously right and incredibly wrong with his approach on how he deals with Tita. He's right in that it's dangerous to take Tita along. But the problem is that you're risking her following you of her own accord and fucking things up. Oh, and would you look at that? Tita followed and fucked everything up because she loves her grandfather. You moron. And no, I don't believe that this is an idiot kid plot. Because what the fuck did you expect was gonna happen? Seriously. Ah! Anyways. Speaking of Tita, we have Professor Russell, who is a hoot. He's hilarious. Although I do like that he can get serious when he wants to be. Also, I just want you to keep in mind, I want you to keep Professor Russell in the back of your mind when we get to the Cold Steel games. Just as a FYI. Now let's talk about some characters that have appeared before. Let's start with Niall and Dorothy. You meet these two in chapter 1, and I love these two. They're kind of fun. Niall definitely kind of seems to warm up to the idea of working with Estelle and Joshua, and is basically the exact opposite of Agate. Agate, Agate remains an abrasive, irritating, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say it, child abusing fuckwad. Good. Good. Throughout the entire game. Granted, Estelle and Joshua were in their mid-teens, but yeah, I'm just gonna still call that abuse. Because he is basically treating Estelle and Joshua like they will never reach his level. And what's stupid is you could make him arrogant without being abrasive or abusive about it. How? One simple change to his dialogue when addressing Estelle and Joshua. Change it to have Agate, instead of saying Agate being like, "Oh, you rookies are just gonna slow me down," or "You suck," or "You should keep out of it," or blah 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 blah. Instead, have Agate be like, "Stick by me, we'll be good, because I'm awesome, awesome, and hey, you might actually learn a thing or two." That's still arrogance, but that's arrogance that teaches rather than arrogance that just has a stick shoved up his fucking ass. I'm. Ugh, oh my god! Just again, if he was actually worth his salt in gameplay, I probably would be like, well, he's just an irritating character I want off my screen. But no, Agate is a get the fuck off my screen character. For that very fucking reason. Fuck Agate. And fuck his attitude. Sorry for that rant there, but that's in contrast to Niall. Because Niall's different. Niall, for all intents and purposes, is more like, oh, I gotta work with some kids, but then he works with them. Oh, you kids are actually worth your salt. Okay, I'm gonna start warming up to you over the course of the game. You see the difference? Agate remains his same abrasive self for the entire fucking game. But Niall actually warms up to him. And yeah, he gets agitated and yada yada yada, but he understands. He's not stupid. He has a fucking brain in his fucking head. He just doesn't just arrogantly presume that he is right, the end, like Agate. No, he's like, I'm going to seek out the truth because I actually have a brain. And I like that because that actually makes a lot of sense. Dorothy is a bit of a klutz and is Niall's right hand woman, or at least she wants to be Niall's right hand woman. Now, whether or not you think there should be any romantic connotations between the two, I will say that's a bit iffy because of the way Niall treats her in chapter 1, even though that was more of a wake up smack in order to, wake her up when she fell asleep on the job. I will say this, I think he warms up to Dorothy more as the game goes on as well. It's not even so much just a pure softening of his character, so much as the shell cracking and the true nice guy underneath getting through that gruff exterior, right? Because Niall is a reporter who, for all intents and purposes, kind of has three motives over the course of the thing, and it's not how much mirror he can make. The first, he wants, he has a thirst for knowledge. Second, he loves a challenge. And third, and that's related to the first point that I had said, He wants to get that whatever truth that he learns into the hands of the people, in the hands of his readers. In other words, he is an actual journalist, not some corporate hack who writes a fluff piece article or writes an article sucking the dick of a major corporation. If anything, Niall's the kind of person who would report on a story and make sure all of a corporation's dirty laundry is as much of a corporation's dirty laundry is out on display as much as he possibly can. Because Niall is awesome. So then there's our favorite traveling musician and pain in Mueller's ass, Olivier. After you find out Olivier's true identity, it kind of paints that scene where he doesn't get to go to the dinner party at the castle as still in a different light, doesn't it? Yeah. Olivier's great, but I really don't have much to say about him up until up until his identity is revealed. So, yeah. So then there's Zin, who's just kind of he's basically a big teddy bear, and I love it. Deadly teddy bear, but hey, that's only when you piss him. That's only when you piss him off and are his opponent. So that's cool. So let's talk about Colonel Richard. So Colonel Richard has this entire plan and coup to basically screw over not only the Queen, but Princess Claudia, aka Chloe, around. So Colonel Richard is an interesting antagonist because on the one hand his motives are understandable, on the other he's kind of an arrogant twat. Liberal must be strong again. And the Queen uniting all of the people is not a way to do that? Again, it's the whole united we stand, divided we fall thing. It's actually the problem that erupts in cold steel. Thank God that arrogant jackass didn't say to strike against liberal. Yeesh. Liberals had enough issues. Issues without adding to it. So all throughout the game, we've been learning that Cassius was a part of the military, and that he's a pretty high-ranking person. He was the mentor of Colonel Richard, and there's also another guy, General Morgan, who was basically Cassius's best friend in the military, and General Morgan hated that Cassius bowed out of the military. He despised that. It. Excuse me. That's actually why he goes back to the military at the end of this game to kind of restructure it, because obviously his absence caused a lot of issues. So, yeah. There's my note about Agate. We've already covered that. Let's talk about the Queen and Claudia for a second. Now, it is typical fiction for a princess to disguise herself as a commoner. But what's funny is my favorite part is that Estelle doesn't pick up on it until she's practically told that Claudia is, in fact, Chloe. It's actually kind of funny in its own right. I also do not have anything to say about Duke. What's his face? He is pathetic. He is a jackass. Oh, and he's also sexist. Moronically sexist because Estelle, Shara, and Chloe go and confront him, and he says point blank that women suck, basically. Like he basically says the equivalent of women only belong in the kitchen out loud to three armed women. Yeah, I only spared that fat bastard because I wanted the extra BP, but man, are you fucking serious? Jesus, dude. Especially considering this is a franchise where I can name like a half a dozen at least, no, more than half a dozen powerful women in it. I mean, for God's sakes, Estelle, Shara, Chloe, although that's more strength of character than anything, Tita, strength of character once again. Let's see. Zexi, I can never remember the name. Lloyd's sword wielding partner. Um, Tio. Yo. Uh, Elisa, Laura, Fee. Oops, sorry for bumping the mic. Fee, Emma, Sarah. Uh, who else? Princess Alphen. Again, more so character than anything. Um, Muse, even though I really get annoyed at her. Yuna, you knew she was coming up. Altina. Oh, Milliam. I forgot about Milliam. Like, you see how rapid fire I listed off a bunch of female characters that make his statements so goddamn pathetic. I could keep going, honestly. Honestly. you know? Captain Claire, actually, nope, Angelica. There's another one. Toa. Can't forget about her. LeGuin. Aurelia. Can't forget about her. Okay, I'll stop. You get the point, right? Hell, I would even argue some of the random students, from the Cold Steel games would actually be pretty strong-willed as well, even if not, combat, combat specialists. But again, yeah, it kind of flies in the face when I can name so many women that are just way stronger willed. Hell, I would even put the queen of Liberl, I forget her name, please forgive me, above him in terms of how good he is because he's a moron. He really is. And it really goes to show just how pathetic he is. Ugh. But yeah. So, time for my last few notes. Let's talk about Bracer Authority now. Now, there is a concept that those who have watched Star Trek before are familiar with. It's called the Prime Directive. Now, most people tend to be. The Prime Directive is interesting because it's supposed to be the Prime Directive of non interference. But the problem is that the Prime Directive is basically a good idea that was turned into gospel and sacrosanct, and it just became an excuse to sit there and watch people die. Yeah, to quote SF Debris, a person who allows millions to die and points at a piece of paper is not the hero in your story. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Which is funny because effectively that is the idea. They're pointing at a piece of paper and saying we can't exactly interfere with internal political affairs. Except, well, there is a bit of a loophole. If the political entities in question ask for the bracers' help, then they are contractually obligated to help, right? So there you go. It's actually kind of a nifty idea and a nice way to circumvent that prime directive. So then Professor Alba is revealed and the twist happens. I will admit I didn't call this when I first learned of this. Professor Alba, and it reveals himself as Weissman the Faceless to Joshua, and, well, Joshua is revealed to be an Ouroboros member himself, the Black Fang. And a certain character who shares the name with the with everybody's favorite dream serial killer of dreams, Freddy Krueger, will know that will know what I mean by that. You know, the character from Cold Steel that has a connection to Freddy Krueger will understand that. Sorry for that minor spoiler, but it is very minor, and it really kind of feels like it was inspired by this. So then at Grand Seal Castle, Joshua reveals to Estelle all of his backstory about how he basically was the survivor of a terrible tragedy that we'll talk about more when we get to the Sky 2 video. And then he basically they confess to each other. And then he leaves. Because, well, what he reveals is that he's a murdering monster because, well, the magician basically turned him into that. Sticking around any longer will just make Estelle realize just how disgusting his true nature is. So he has to leave. He enjoyed the last 5 years. And all he can do now is bid her farewell. And thus we end on to be continued. Doesn't actually say to be continued, but that is what is implied because it is literally in the form of an 80s cartoons to be continued, because there's a trailer for the next game right after that. Right after the credits, I should say. I will talk more about the nature of cliffhangers and why I feel like this cliffhanger was fine, but Cold Steel's would have been crap if we didn't get a Cold Steel 2. If we never got a Sky 2, I think we would be somewhat okay with this being a plot thread that could be picked up later in, say, Cold Steel 4. But, regardless, that's it for me. Thank you very much for joining me today. Hey, I enjoyed Sky 1. I almost got Cold Steel 1. I did enjoy Cold Steel 1, but anyways, I enjoyed this playthrough of Sky 1, and I hope that the technical issues will piss off, and I can enjoy Sky 2 just as much. Till next time, Blue Wolf Alex of the Lore Walkers, signing out. Have a good one.